Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Sarita, for hosting this webinar. And nice to see a lot of participants in this evening. So today I'll be talking about stateful workloads and persistent storage in storages in Kubernetes. Myself, Arvinda. So I'm currently co-founder at Kadalo.io, and I'm also a member of GlusterFS core team, maintaining multiple components in GlusterFS. And I am interested in distributed file systems, web applications, and databases. So at Kadalo.io, we are building opinionated GlusterFS distribution. So that is focused on making GlusterFS more friendly and easily usable, and also utilizing the power of GlusterFS to everyone. So let's start with introducing Kubernetes. So I think previously there was a full webinar about Kubernetes, like introduction to Kubernetes. So I'll talk about very brief introduction. I'll give very brief introduction to Kubernetes. So it is basically the container orchestration tool. So that also helps in deploying, scaling, and managing the container applications in multiple nodes. So in this image, you can see like there can be like one or more master nodes, and multiple nodes can be added to that cluster, Kubernetes cluster. So in it, Kubernetes manages all the nodes, and it provides the unified interface for users to manage, like deploy containers without worrying about they should starting in one node or multiple node, or they can just give the deployment replica, number of replica is 2, replica 3. So then Kubernetes Kubernetes will take care of spawning respective uh, the copies of the application. So we'll go through some of the basic terminologies in Kubernetes that is required for to understand persistent storage issues and challenges. So the first one is we all know like containers and Kubernetes. There are like pod is there. So pod means it's a group of containers. So those containers share some of the resources like network. So the communication between containers inside pod, it can be like a local network communication. So and also they can share the disk and other resources. So and outside the pod, some of these resources are isolated. So there are means to communicate between pods, but within the pod, all containers can freely communicate between them. So next one is the like stateless applications and stateful application. So the Kubernetes, it is very easy to deploy application, but if some applications nature is like if that application expects some state to be maintained in the node, so then it may be very difficult. So before that, we'll understand what are stateless applications and stateful applications. So stateless applications do not store any data or any state in the node where they are running. So they can access the data from external storage or external database, but they will not use the local node storage for keeping the data. Like for example, a web application which is connecting to an external database and serving the pages. So that's also a stateless application because so stateless applications can be scheduled in any node. Like if you have 3 nodes or multiple node cluster, so you can easily schedule in different node without worrying about moving the data or without worrying about the state is there or not or persisted or not. So in case of stateful, so the data is maintained in the same server or in the same node. So it is difficult to schedule in other nodes, like say, for example, database itself. So that needs a storage space. So all the data is stored on the disk, and if we schedule the database server to run on different node, without moving the data, then it will not work, or it will start as a new database. So it is not the expected behavior. So stateful applications, it is very challenging to run stateful applications in Kubernetes unless we have a persistent storage solution. So to understand more about the state and persistence, so we'll run an application without providing any storage in Kubernetes. So I'll show you so this is the YAML file. So in Kubernetes, so to create new type of resource or new pod, so we can provide the input in the form of YAML. So YAML is similar to XML, JSON, and other data formats. So YAML it works on the white space and the indentation based. So if we give the metadata or manifest file in the YAML format, and so is the font visible, or do you need to increase the size?
Font is visible, Arvinda.
Okay. Okay, we can give input to Kubernetes to create new resources in the YAML format. So this is one example where I am creating Nginx application. So the interesting fields or metadata is we are giving a name to the pod, and kind is pod. That means it will create a pod. And in the specification, we are giving the name of the container and other inputs like container port and other details. So now we can create new resources using kubectl create command. Kubectl create accepts a file, so YAML file, and it will create the resources. So when we run that, it will create the resource. So when we see the get pods command, so it will show that that app is running. So we get the IP of that pod where it is running, and we can see the content. We'll do the curl request to see the what Nginx server is serving. So the home page of Nginx server is just showing that index file, that is welcome to Nginx page is showing. So now this is all fine. So now, so if we restart the container, or if we simulate the node, before that, we'll edit the Nginx index HTML file. We'll modify the content so that we can see like it will persist or not. So instead of welcome to Nginx, we added hello world. So now save it and exit from the container. So now if we run the curl command, it will show the hello world. So now we'll simulate the node going down scenario, like when node goes down or container is killed. So the Kubernetes will restart the container. So now we'll kill the container so that Kubernetes will restart the container. So, but once it is restarted, so when we see the curl command again, so it is again defaulted to welcome to Nginx instead of the data we updated previously before that node going down. So this is the issue with persistent storage. Like if you don't have persistent storage in Kubernetes or Docker environment, so all the containers are stateless. So that's why we need persistent storage. So containers are stateless and they loses all data after restart. So we need some mechanism to keep those data. Like say, if the web application is using all the session information as in the same node as a state, and if container restarts, or if server or if node restarts, so then all the users who have logged into that application will be logged out. In the sense, if there is no session data, then it will be like it may cause unexpected behaviors. So what options we have? Like one option we can try is provide a host directory as the persistent storage. So that we'll see by giving the host directory. So we'll use the same Nginx YAML file, but note the one difference. So instead of like before we created a YAML file without giving any storage. So now we are giving volume mount. So if you see volume mount, that Nginx path, and so we are defining that volume as host path. So from the host home Ubuntu web app 2 directory, use that as a volume as user share Nginx HTML, so that whatever we add in this directory in the pod, it will be persisted in the host machine in the respective directory. So let us create a directory in the host machine, and then deploy this YAML file using the kubectl create command. So we'll do the same thing by listing the pod and getting the IP of it, and then using curl we can see the content of that. So in this case, since host volume is empty, in the empty directory is provided as host volume, so the index.html file is not there. So we'll log into pod and create the index.html file. We'll go to that directory and create the index.html file. Save it and exit from the container, exit from the pod. So now if we run hello world, it will show the output. So now using the same method, we'll kill that container using the docker kill command, so that Kubernetes will restart that pod. So after restart, if we run that curl command again, we are getting the same details or same data which we added previously before restart. So if you see the host directory, so that exact same file will be there and content will be there. So this all looks nice, and what is the problem? Like, can this be used as a persistent storage solution for all the applications, or is it possible to use this method? So this is fine in the single node setup, but in multi-node setup, this is not sufficient. So if we restrict the Kubernetes to start that application only in that respective node or where the data resides, so then we are limiting Kubernetes to its capability to start applications in multiple nodes, or when node goes down or node reaches in a failed state, so then it can't start the pod in other available nodes. So that is a limiting factor. So to get applications running without any downtime, so multiple options are available. Like we can use cloud storage or NFS like storage, so that runs in an external node and all the applications can mount it and use it. So otherwise can use distributed storage solutions, or you can use object storage solutions. So this is all good, but so every storage provider has its own way to access data. Like if the mount command, so that may work for one storage solution, but it may not be same for the other storage solution. And there are other requirements which are very specific to storage provider, so that it may not be possible to, or if it will become very complex to maintain it, or every application needs to take care of how to handle storage and all those things. So, and automatic remounts when node is rebooted, and those things also applications need to take care without like instead of Kubernetes taking care of it. So, and also dynamic requests are more common in this case. Like for example, like web application may request 10 GB of storage space, and database may request 100 GB of storage. So this kind of dynamic requests, it is very difficult to do it with the multiple providers and manual way. So that is why what is the solution? Like in Kubernetes and many other container orchestrators together, they created the standard interface. So for it provides container storage interface, provides plugin like storage vendors uh, like plugin capability to storage vendors, so they can easily integrate with this storage interface by implementing some set of functions which are exposed in the sense of if for creating a volume or provisioning a persistent volume. So there is an defined method to that, and for deleting the persistent volume or expanding the volume. So for each step or each stages, so there is a defined methods so that the storage providers can implement. So and all like Kubernetes and other container orchestrators like understands this interface, and they make gRPC calls whenever request is made. So there are like more than 100 CSI drivers listed in that page, Kubernetes csi.github.io in that page. So we'll discuss one of the CSI driver today in the today's topic. So let us see like what storage providers has to do. Like they have to implement the interface provided by the specification, and the actual storage that can be inside the Kubernetes, or Kubernetes can manage the storage pools or the storage disk, or it can be external. So only the interface needs to be within the Kubernetes, and so all applications can request persistent volumes. So and there is one more terminology called storage classes. So since CSI, any storage providers can implement that persistent volume capabilities or CSI interfaces. So we can provide more inputs to that storage providers, like saying more parameters while creating the storage pool or store persistent volume, like say what is the PV type, or what is the storage name, or what is the is it fast storage, or all those configurations which can be used while provisioning the volume. So those things can be provided using the storage classes. So where it will be useful, like the storage classes. So there is a persistent volume claim. So like if a application requires like 1 GB storage or 10 GB storage, so they have to claim it. So persistent volume claim is a way to inform Kubernetes that I need a storage from this storage class. So storage class we previously created as a DB storage, which is pointing to a storage provider. So in the persistent volume claim, we are not giving all the other details, like from which storage provider we need volume and those details. So we just give storage class name. From this storage class, we need 1 GB of storage space. And also there is one more interesting thing is access mode. So read write once is one of the access mode. So that means this persistent volume, Kubernetes will allow only to access from one of the node. And so if two parts or two applications are trying to use the same persistent volume, then it will not allow. So this is useful when block storage is used. So accessing from multiple places may corrupt the file system or may corrupt the storage. So and other option available here is read write many. So that means it is very useful for the file storage. So if it is a file volume, so it can be mounted from multiple places. So we'll look into that in the later slides. So here is the application example, how it uses the PV. So it is similar to the host path, which host path example which we seen earlier. So only difference is, so instead of host path details, it is providing persistent volume claim details. The claim name is provided here. So if you note in the application specific manifest file and also the PVC manifest file, so there is no mention of storage provider. So only storage class is dealing with the storage pool and other details. But none of the applications, like applications need not worry about from which storage I'll get the storage space. So the next one is Kubernetes operator. So this is like application specific controller. So that performs many like housekeeping, bookkeeping activities for a specific application. So in this case, like CSI drivers may not be enough, like alone may not be enough to provide dynamic provisioning and to deploy more storage pools and other activities like during upgrade. So and also if one storage pool is getting full, so then operator can intelligently detect that and start new storage pools. So all those activities, it's not possible with CSI drivers alone. So Kubernetes allows to have a controller, so which can continuously monitor the resources in the particular namespace and do the like needful activities. So now let us introducing Kadalu storage. So Kadalu storage is one of the CSI driver which is listed in, like the link listed lists like 100 and more than 100 CSI providers, CSI drivers. So this is one of them, and this is an open source solution based on ClusterBase. So and it provides persistent storage for the stateful workloads. So this implements, Kadalu implements both the operator and the CSI drivers, and also a kubectl extension. So we'll get the Kadalu as a subcommand for the kubectl that we will cover in the next slide. So and Kadalu storage provides multiple storage pools, storage pool types or the configurations. So storage pools, it can be like distributed or replicated. So that depending on the high availability requirement or the disperse or eraser coding is required. Like if you want to utilize the space effectively, so then disperse volume can be used. And if high availability is required, then replicated storage pool can be used. So we'll cover that. So once we install Kadalu, so we'll go through the Kadalu installation demo. But before that, so once we install Kadalu, so we'll see some of the pods running. Like if you run kubectl get pods and namespace Kadalu, so you'll see some of the pods are running. So operator pod is the one which takes care of starting new server nodes or server pods, and so managing all the other resources in the namespace. So it will be like one operator pod per cluster. And next one is the CSI provisioner. So provisioner will take care of or handles the request for creating, deleting, and expanding the PVs, persistent volumes, and also snapshot and other commands it handles. So and it will be like only one provisioner pod will be running in a cluster. So and the next one is node plugin. So this output is from the 3-node setup. So 3 node plugins are running. So node plugins are responsible for mounting the volume when application starts in that node, and unmounting the volume when application no more requires that PV. So this node plugin will handle that. So and whenever we add the storage pool, so it will Kadalu operator will start the server parts. So in this example, we have 2 storage pools. The first one is replica 1 or without any high availability. So and the next storage pool SP2 is the replica. So that is storage provided from the 3 nodes, cube 1, cube 2, and cube 3. So that we'll see in the demo. So now how to install Kadalo operator. So installing Kadalo operator is very simple. So download the kubectl extension. So kubectl extension is you can create any executable with name starting with kubectl hyphen, and you can give a name. So then put it under a path where put it under like environment path, so that then it will be available as a subcommand. So once it is downloaded, then install it using install command. So here I am installing to user local bin. So now if you see kubectl Kadalo is a subcommand. So it is Kadalo is available as a subcommand to kubectl, and run the version command to make sure that it downloaded the latest one. So now it is easy to install, like run kubectl Kadalo and install. It downloads the latest operator manifest file, and it installs the operator and CSI drivers required. So it is running. So all the parts are now running. So storage pool, this we covered briefly in the previous slide. So in this talk, we'll cover only replica 1 and replica 3. So there are other configurations available based on the needs, like disperse, replica 2, and other type of volumes. So replica 1 is like storage provided from only one node. So where this will be useful, like if storage provided is from one node, so this sometimes like it is nothing but providing storage from the host itself. So it is equivalent to that, but only the difference is you can access the storage from other nodes as well. Like if you have one dedicated node for with the biggest like bigger storage capacity, so that node can be provided to Kadalo for managing like providing persistent volume from that node. And then this can be like if you have multi-node setup, so all the nodes like applications running in different nodes can get storage from this storage pool. So this does not provide high availability when the storage node itself goes down. So because the storage, if unless the storage node comes back, you can't get the storage. But this configuration is useful when like say home server using IoT devices. So you can like one is providing all the configuration like persistent volume for storing configuration to other IoT devices. So in those use cases, you can use this configuration. Or like if you are using Amazon EVS volume or Azure volume as a PVC, so that you can use it as a storage pool for the Kadalo server, like Kadalo, and then it can multiplex and provide more volumes from the bigger storage provided. So that is one configuration. And other one is replica 3. So replica 3 is it provides storage from 3 nodes. So if you have multiple nodes in your cluster, you can provide like dedicate 3 nodes to serve the storage from that, or provide persistent volume from those 3 nodes. So Kadalo, once it is storage pool is defined, so it starts Kadalo server process in all the 3 nodes as a 3 parts, and then it will provide all the client functionality using the CSI node plugin. So this is highly available in the sense, since it is replica 3, it allows one storage node going down at any time. So out of 3 nodes, if one storage node goes down, so the persistent volume or the applications using the persistent volume from this storage pool, so will not have any downtime. So they will continue to work because Kadalo will take care of serving data from other 2 nodes. So we'll deploy any one storage pool. that is replica 1 or replica 3. Let's see. So adding storage pool is also using the kubectl Kadalo plugin. So using the storage add command, so you can give type as replica 1, replica 3, and give it a name like SP1 is the name given here. And you can give the multiple devices, like if it is replica 1, it accepts only one device. And if it is replica 3, it accepts 3 devices, and it can be devices or the path from the host machine, or it can be another PVC also, like if from the other storage provider, you can use the PVC itself as the storage pool here. So that's also possible. In this example, I'm creating a storage pool 1 with by giving only one device. So it asks for confirmation that, so this is a configuration or manifest file that I'm providing to Kubernetes to create this storage pool. So once it is confirmed, so then it creates that storage pool. So if we run the getpods command, it will show that storage pool, like the server SP1 is started. So now all the pods are running, like the server, all the containers inside that server is also running. So now let us see the same example which we previously tried, like host path we tried. So instead of that, we'll try creating a PV from Kadalo and then using that in the Nginx pod. So as we see in the example, like in the slides, so persistent volume climb is the manifest file where we request for storage size. Like in this example, I am requesting 100 MB space, and the access mode is read write many. So that means since it's a file storage, so it doesn't matter like if it is mounted in multiple places or it is accessed by the multiple applications. So in the storage class name, I'm giving it as storage pool 2 that we created earlier, and deploy this manifest file using kubectl create command.
Arvinda, sorry to intervene. There are a couple of questions.
Okay.
We can pause at an appropriate time to take those questions.
Okay, I think almost I'm near to end, so we can take after also.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so kubectl get PVC command shows like the PVC, it is bound. Bound means it is already provisioned by the storage provider and it is ready to use. So now we go ahead and deploy the pod or deploy the application. So this is also similar to the host path example. So in this case, instead of host path, we are giving the client name, which we can use it as a persistent volume. In this example, previously we created PV2, so that so I am giving that PV2 here. So deploy this manifest file using kubectl command. So now the get parts command shows all the parts that is running. So now we created, like we log into that pod and create the index.html as before. So if you see the curl output, it will show that that data from the persistent volume. Even if we restart this, and so it will persist that data. And since we used replica 3 configuration here, that is SP2 storage pool 2. So then, so even if storage pool goes down, like one of the storage node goes down, so it will be able to provide storage consistently, provide the storage from other 2 nodes. So some of the project highlights. So GlusterFS is like it's more than 200 contributors, and many companies are already using GlusterFS. So and Kadalu is a young project started in 2019. So now with more than 20 contributors, and many users are already trying it in production. And so the project is started by GlusterFS core team members, few GlusterFS core team members, and the project is available in GitHub. So Kadalu and Kadalu/Kadalu, and all the documentation is available in Kadalu.io docs. Okay, so any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Arvinda. So I'll read out the question for the benefit of everybody that are participating. The first question is from Srivatsa. What if there is a storage created with same name and different storage providers, as in DB-storage? Very quite possible that we can have same names with DB-storage. Since in PVC there is no mention of CSI driver. So that's the question.
Correct. So all the entities managed by Kubernetes, so that takes care of like these unique constraints. Say, for example, even PV names or PV claim names. So that also, like if you are creating in same namespace, it will not allow to create same PV again. Like if it is PV1 is created using one of the storage provider, it will not allow to create the same named PV from other storage provider. So similarly for storage class, since it is maintained by the Kubernetes itself, so it will make sure that the name like already exists and it can't be used by other providers.
Okay, there are a couple more questions. Let me quickly go to the. Yeah. Is Kadalu storage same as ClusterFS?
Yeah, at the core, we are using GlusterFS, but so Gluster uses a management layer called GlusterD. So that GlusterD is the management daemon that takes care of all the GlusterFS resources, like the brick processes and other processes in the cluster. So in Kadalu, we are not using that management layer. We are directly integrated with Kubernetes APIs, and we delegated most of the clustering functionality to Kubernetes itself, and we are using only the file system layer from the GlusterFS.
Okay. One more question from Kiran.
Okay.
Kadalu namespace has many pods created. How to look at which pod would have the required information for you when you get into an error? Where to look for logs?
Yeah, if it is error, depends on the error. Like if it is error related to the provisioning, in the sense create the persistent volume or delete or expand. So those kind of provisioning related things. So then CSI provisioner is the one place to look into that. So and if it is error related to, like if some storage pool is not starting, or so you deploy something and you deploy a storage pool configuration, but you don't see storage servers like pods at all. So then operator logs will have more information, like why it failed to start the storage pools and storage pods. So you can look into the operator pods. So if it is the error related to a particular like failure in the, like say application pod, is not able to get the storage. Like PV is already there, but it's unable to get the storage when it is requested, or its mount is failing. So then we can, using the kubectl describe, we can see like in which node the pod is deployed or the application is deployed. So we can look into the respective nodes, node plugin pod logs, so that we'll get more information like where is the failure, is the storage pool is not connected, or if it is if the replica 1 is used and all the storage pools are down. So in those scenarios, those kind of logs you will get in the respective node plugin.
Interesting. I hope that's so. Yeah, I think Kiran has a follow-up question now based on what you answered. When a storage pod is down, how will mounts behave?
Yeah, so in case of replica 3, so you will not see any difference in the mount. So in if it is replica 1 based setup, so then it basically it is a GlusterFS client process. So it is running and listening to the server processes connections. So if in case of replica 1 storage pool is down, so applications may see hang. So the mount process will not die. So that will be running, but applications may get transport endpoint not connected or connectivity related errors, like when we try to create the file or access the data. But it will automatically reconnect when storage pool comes back.
Okay, so there's one more question. I mean, I think that is one of the last question, at least we have from the audience.
Okay.
The question goes like this. Another use case for replica 1 is if application takes care of consistency replication by itself, like Cassandra, for example.
Yeah, that is possible. Like then, like say, if application is takes care of this high availability or consistency, so then it can use that replica 1, and but it has to get from multiple, like it has to request for the multiple replica 1 volumes, so that it will have its own storage pools. Like say, for example, deploying Gluster itself in Kubernetes using Gluster PVC itself. So instead of like all the bricks are getting PVC itself, so then it provides the high availability. So it will be similar to that. Like if application is using a PVC just for the just for storing the local data or one copy of data, so then it can continue to use it. So it will be very similar to that. So even Kadalo supports, like say, the storage pool. In the example, we have seen that device is accepted. So instead of device, we can give a PVC itself, like -- PVC, and the PVC name, PV client name, that may be provided from the other storage provider, like say Amazon EBS volume also provides a CSA driver. So we can create a one persistent volume from Amazon EBS and then use that volume as a storage pool here. So their advantage we are getting is, so we can have only one big storage from external. So and then we can split into smaller PVCs using the Kadalo operator. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Priyank, Arvind, am I audible?
Yes, Aditya. You are.
So Arvind, if somebody is interested to contribute on Kadalu, so what are the main areas that you are looking at, and what skill sets they need to bring to the table? Can you please elaborate a bit on contributions to Kadalu?
Okay, so in the code, as we discussed, so we are using GlusterFS. So that is written using C program. So if you are interested in contributing to core file system, so you can contribute to GlusterFS project. So and all the Kubernetes integration. So it is the operator, CSR driver, everything is written in Python. So it is very easy to get started if someone new is looking to contribute to the project. So all the project is written in Python. So feel free to contribute.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Kadalo.io website lists all the like open source like project repositories and Slack channel where we usually hang out. So all those details are available in that website.
Arvinda, given that this recording will be shared, maybe we can you can share your website and show us where to find those details you mentioned,
Okay, we'll do that.
just for the benefit of everybody that are attending and also those who want to watch it later.
Okay. So this is the website, Kadalo.io's website. So and in the open source tab, so we do have listed all the projects. Like Kadalo is the main project where so all the integration exists, like the Python CSR driver, operator, and other components. So and there are other components which are not specific to Kubernetes integration, but which are like specific to ClusterFS related. So you can see the list of projects there. And also it is documented steps like how to contribute and different ways to contribute and how like the link for the Slack. We can join the Slack and discuss on the topic. So or if any feature is pending, like if some gap is there, like if for your use case, if something is not yet working, so you can request for the feature as well. So and so also you can contribute testing, like if some use case to be tested, then we can include that in our continuous integration.
Arvinda, while we were looking at the website, there was one more question that came in. I'll just read it out. It's from Mr. Kshitij. He says, as assuming we are running read-write many, what happens if I scale a stateful set to say 1,000 replicas? What happens with the volume? Do we mount the PV to multiple nodes?
Yeah, if it is the 1,000 applications, so or if they are running in a single node, then the host mount or the ClusterFS mount, so that we'll reuse in a sense once the mount is created. So we'll only the mount the subvolumes. So if it is running in multiple nodes, like the 1,000 application parts are distributed across the nodes. So in every node, there will be one mount. There will be one mount process which takes care of providing data.
I hope that answers. So, Arvinda, I think we have reached the scheduled time. We are slightly 8 minutes into the scheduled time, but it was a wonderful conversation. I'm sure there will be follow-up questions from the participants and also from those who would watch this recording on YouTube later. So for everybody, we are on LinkedIn, so you can find us on LinkedIn. Our Arita page is also on LinkedIn. You can follow for future webinars as well. Also, if you have questions, you can find us on LinkedIn. Feel free to get connected and ask questions. Arvinda is on LinkedIn, and we have also shown the website through which you can engage and contribute. So this whole webinar and also the follow-through engagement is a contribution to the larger technology community and the solutioning community. So please feel free to get involved and participate. And by contributing, we all will gain more. So with that, Arvinda, I would like to thank you for spending time to prepare and come present here, and also share all your knowledge around Kubernetes and the critical problem that many of the application developers are facing today. So on behalf of everybody, I would like to thank you for your time and also volunteering to share the knowledge. And this doesn't end here, so we will continue the conversation in various different forms, and we look forward to being engaged.
Yeah, thanks, Priyank. So it was nice experience, and I got opportunity to share about the project, and yeah, looking nice that people are asking more questions and interested in that. So happy to answer if there are more questions. So I'm also on Twitter, so you can either reach out to my Twitter handler, Arvinda VK, or you can reach out to Kadalu's Twitter handle, Kadalu.io.
Great. So thank you everybody taking time on a weekday and also evening time and joining us for this wonderful discussion. And we will try to make it every month a technology discussion on some of the things that are really important and really current, and also some of the emerging technologies. So we will look forward to hosting you again. Thank you for your participation, everyone. Thank you.